Welcome back to the Strength and Speed podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner, Evan Preparis. I do have a guest with me on the line. Before we get to him, though, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Compex. Compex is an electrical muscle stimulator and TENS unit. So if you're trying to improve your physical fitness or just trying to get some pain relief, Compex can help. Essentially, it's electrodes you put on your body, and it sends small electrical shocks through your body, makes your muscles twitch, can help with pain relief, like I said, or the electrical muscle stimulator side can help with endurance, explosive strength, stuff like that. They have a couple different options. The lowest model, I believe, is the Edge. That comes in around just under $100. And the highest model is the wireless one, which is phenomenal because, with the lower model, you have essentially wires hanging off you. And the wireless one, you just put these little pads on and they're Bluetooth in. A pretty awesome device. And it's portable, so it's a lot smaller than some other recovery devices, and you can actually just throw it in your luggage when you go on a vacation or to a race. All right, head over to compexusa.com and check them out. Let's get to our guest. So today on the podcast, we have Ja Shua Ried. Josh, say hi.
How?
The first thing I noticed about Joshua, besides his mohawk and tattoos, is his spelling of your name. So your full name is Joshua B. Redinger, and then you spell it J-A-S-H-U-A and Ried. So what's with the funky spelling before we get into your bio?
We're just having fun over here. So growing up, no one ever pronounced my name right. Obviously, Joshua isn't that difficult, but Riedinger, nobody says Riedinger. It's either Riedinger or Riedinger. Not that I take offense to it or anything, but I just figured I'd simplify it. Joshua Ried flows off the tongue easily. And my friend growing up always called me Ja, which I liked. So I thought it'd be fun to just kind of break it up because a name is just like something that's written down on your birth certificate. So I figure smudging it around a little bit causes no harm.
Right on. So I'm going to run over some of your highlights and then we'll get into a little bit more about you, your training, what your plans are for 2019 and 2020, and some of your results from the past year and how you've accomplished those. All right, so some of your athletic highlights, right? You got a lot on your plate there. Cranberry Lake 50 FKT, so fastest known time. Also got another FKT, the Wittenberg Cornell Slide Loop, Devil's Path Out and Back FKT, and then a lot of Spartan and Tough Mudder races in the Northeast there. So third at Spartan Ultra in New Jersey, first Bone Frog Endurance, Massachusetts, first Spartan Sprint West Point, New York, first Spartan Super, Massachusetts, fourth Spartan Super, New Jersey, fifth World's Toughest Mudder, Atlanta, Georgia, first Spartan Super, Greek Peak, second Spartan Beast, New York, second TNFEC, which I'm at in Bear Mountain, New York.
And the North Face Endurance Challenge, that was a fantastic ultra event. They actually had distances from 5K all the way up to the 50 miler. That was the first event I ever did. And that thing was, that was in my home area. I live in the Catskills, but that was down in the Harriman Park area, Bear Mountain. And that was the best introduction I possibly could have had, I believe, to the whole running ultra world. So if anyone out there hasn't done a North Face Endurance Challenge event, highly recommend it. Super well put together. Especially Bear Mountain. The venue is crazy. It's wicked technical. It's beautiful. It always seems to be foggy up on the mountain, which gives that eerie kind of feeling, which I like. I don't know if you get in this, your own personal space.
Right on. And you're also a certified personal trainer and certified primal health coach there. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but you kind of come from an interesting background. So tell us how you got involved in fitness in the first place.
When I was younger, so I'm 28. My dad is 77. So he was an old timer, since I was a youngin'. And we used to go to the gym. He started bringing me to the gym when I was 13 years old. And this guy just did bench press and bicep curls. And his biceps to this day, 77 years old, crazy. He'll bust out a set of like 10 pull-ups, and he's already had triple bypass surgery and shit. Guy's the man. If you ever see him at the venue, say hi. He used to take me to the gym, and we work out, and we're like, oh, this is pretty fun. This is cool. And I got like kind of competitive into it. And I was a peewee. Like I was on the wrestling team in 8th grade for it was 82 or 83 pounds they wanted me to wrestle at because they didn't have anybody that light. So I was like the smallest kid up until almost 10th grade. I finally had a growth spurt. But like, so leading up into that, I figured, okay, I'm not growing. Working out is kind of a way for me to like stay with the pack, stay strong. So, so if I get into a brawl, like I'll be able to defend myself against these older studs. Not really. They were all cool with me. I got picked on a little bit, but I don't like point at that for being the reason that I wanted to get fit and whatnot. I just kind of wanted to keep up. And as time went on, I finally had a growth spurt, but I got lazy, and I started smoking cigarettes when I was 17, and I kind of fell off the fitness bandwagon. I always did BMX racing, which was super fun. My parents actually took me to do that. Before I started going to the gym with my dad, I started doing that when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I did that all the way up until I was 14. I was pretty good at that. Actually, I was state champ in 2001 as a little young lad. Again, I was like 70 pounds, soaking wet, but I could whip a bike around the track. That was super cool. I think that lent me a hand with agility. But I started going from the BMX into more lifting, and then just kind of dropped everything and got really lazy for a little while, smoked cigarettes. And then I remember in my early 20s, I went out to California because I was like looking for a little bit of a life change. And my buddy invited me out there to do door-to-door sales, which, by the way, is miserable. If anyone's done door-to-door sales, it's awful. Morally, I wasn't really down with it. So I started looking for an out pretty quick. So like 3 months into that job, I heard about the Pacific Crest Trail, which a lot of people know about, like the Appalachian Trail that runs East Coast, pretty much south to north, like over 2,000 miles. There's a Continental Divide Trail also. I think it's closer to like 3,000 miles. And then the Pacific Crest Trail runs from Mexico to Canada up the West Coast, and that's like 2,600. So I heard about that, and I was like, oh, I should maybe some time in the mountains would be a good idea. And then I went up to Mount Shasta in Northern California for an eclipse. It was pretty rad. It was a total solar eclipse. And there's this volcano out there called Mount Shasta. It's one of the Cascade Mountains. And I remember being there with a bunch of friends, and I looked at this thing in the height of the eclipse, and I just couldn't stop staring at it. I was like, that thing's just like asking me to climb it. And later on, I told somebody that I wanted to climb it, and they're like, yeah, dude, people climb that. I was like, what? This is before I even knew that mountaineering and alpinism were like really a thing. Like I heard of Everest, but it seemed like this really far out kind of thing to do. I didn't realize there was a lot of sport behind it. So it goes to show how kind of sheltered from some of these more extreme forms of athleticism go. And so I decided I was going to climb that. So I trained, gave up smoking and climbed that. And at that point I was hooked, and that was in my early 20s. So fast forward a few years later, mid 20s, I'm back on the East Coast, and I'm hiking in the Catskills, and I kind of had still lingered with the smoking, never completely dropped it, kind of like picked it back up and fiddled around with it. And like 7 years in, I see somebody running through the Catskills, and they looked great. They were just running up and down the mountains. Like, how far are you going? They're like, like 20 miles today. It's like, holy shit, man. People do that. Like, people run that far. And then at that point I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And that was like 24, 25 years old. So yeah, it was just a little over 3 years ago. And at that point, gave up smoking, replaced it with running, and never turned back.
Right on. And why did you go from, not really running at all into the ultra world? Was that a gradual transition, or you just kind of dive headfirst into that?
Well, I kind of knew that I was never the fastest sprinter. Back in high school, I did a little cross country and track. I wasn't a star by any means. I mostly just hung out in the field and threw the discus, or just kind of meandered through the woods during cross country.
But when I wanted to quit smoking, I wanted something to replace it. So at first it started out with running fast just to show me how crappy condition my lungs were in. and and after I did that for a while, I just realized that my runs, I was just ending them shortly. I just wanted to stay out longer and longer. And I kept thinking about that guy that I saw in the mountains. I said he ran for 20 miles. And I thought, how incredible to just for hours on end to be able to go. And I started thinking about it from more of like a survival standpoint, more of a primal ancestral standpoint. I started, because at this point I had also found out things like persistence hunting, just more things were coming in from the periphery, showing me what people were capable of doing and showing me how distanced a lot of society is from some of their more old abilities, innate abilities that we don't really tap into or we're domesticated away from. And so I wanted to kind of get back into that route. And I started experimenting with some longer runs, and I just really enjoyed the headspace that it put me into. It really felt like progress, because at that time I wasn't really using a watch or anything. So I wouldn't be looking at, I wouldn't be running track events and looking at my 200-meter split and be like, oh, I shaved off a second. Hell yeah. That just wasn't really doing it for me. So I'd go run through the mountains and be like, oh, man, I felt like I was out for a lot longer today. I felt like I just ran faster. Or it just felt more natural. And that just made me feel like more of this, that just made me feel more like tapped in to that old, healthy animal self, I guess.
Yeah, it's a great story. I love how some random interaction on a trail helped, kind of redirect your life. Makes me wonder how many other, that, and I'm sure that guy probably has no recollection of that incident even. He's probably just like another Saturday for him or something. So I just kind of wonder how many, like of, the people we've had on the podcast and stuff like that, how many times that's rippled through people's lives and they don't even, or like me personally or you personally, had a compounding effect on someone else's life. It's kind of just something interesting to think about.
Yeah, man, it's really awesome to think about the impact that we could potentially have. And I think that especially for those who do have a greater reach, I'm saying that in terms of like with social media these days, the more people you reach, the more responsibility you have. With power comes great responsibility. And I think it's really important that we recognize that and not put on like a show, a facade, but yeah, definitely do our best to cause like a net positive to everybody around us.
Yeah, I hear you. So you do this first ultra, the North Face Endurance Challenge, and why switch to obstacle course racing, or how did the switch to OCR come about?
So the North Face Endurance Challenge was my intro into ultra events, and that was May 5th of 2017. And I actually had done the New Jersey Beast at the end of April, literally the week before, and that was the longest race I had done up to that point. And I tried to sign up for Elite because I just wanted to run with the fast guys and see where I stood, but it was sold out. So I did, at the time they had competitive instead of age groups. I remember I did competitive, and I just started running up this hill, and I thought, holy crap, man, this event's crazy. I mean, I remember when I got there, I looked around, and I had never seen so many freaking fit people in my life. I mean, there was 6-packs and like tight booties everywhere. I was blown away. I was like, this is my place. This is where I need to be. So I was stoked from the get. And when the race started, we did the roo thing. I was stoked on that. That gets a little tired after a while. But yeah, I was super hyped. And I remember running through the course and swinging the monkey bars, carrying stuff. And everyone was having a rocking time. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Some people are power hiking, some are running, some are grunting, some are just kind of, throwing jokes around. And I just enjoyed the mass of people. And I think that the thing that attracted me the most, next to like the terrain and the obstacles themselves, was like that community feel. Because when I did a lot of sports that I did, they didn't really give me that camaraderie feel. I never really felt like I was in a brotherhood. And I mean, when I say that, that kind of sounds like,
like in the Marines, for example, right? You have your group of guys that you get really close with, and for good reason, because, you go through a lot of dire circumstances with each other. I never really had a large group of people like that. And I didn't necessarily get that through the Spartan, because I'm just passing people on the course. But there was something there that I can't quite put my finger on that felt like like I was having a really awesome connection with everybody. It was just, maybe it was the extra smiles or the high fives, or just seeing people kind of push themselves. Like I was saying before, I feel like a lot of us have kind of gotten domesticated away from that kind of like that primal rooting of getting dirty and pushing hard and working together through hard circumstances, which in a Spartan race might be like helping somebody over a wall. Tough Mudder is a greater example of that, right? Because more teamwork's there typically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just ended that race feeling really good. I was like, this is rocking. And I thought, all right, I'll try another one. Maybe I'll get into the elite next time. I saw that my time in the competitive would have put me in the top 20, I think, for the elite. So I was like, oh, all right, maybe I'm pretty good at this. Well, all right, let's see. There's this North Face Endurance Challenge race coming up. That's pretty close. I'm gonna go try that out. I was like on a roll. I'm gonna carry the momentum. Like, I just did a 13-mile mountain race. I'm gonna go do a 30. Yeah. I'm just gonna go from a half marathon to a ultra marathon. What's a marathon? And the real reason I did that was just because like most regular marathons are on the road. But yeah, the North Face called to me. That just kind of felt like it was next in line. And after that, I thought, wow, I had a really strong race at the North Face Endurance Challenge. I was kind of blown away with that. Like, had one of those emotional times, the cliche emotional time at the finish line, crying like, I can't believe we did it. I didn't know I could do that. Wow, man. So yeah, Pavlonian dog experience. Just good feels associated with that suffering. It's that type 2 fun. Like, you go through the shit, and then when it's over, it's just like this amazing feeling of accomplishment and like relief, but mostly relief that I didn't let myself down, because I'm sure how it is. Like, you have 1 or 2 races and you like didn't really give it all you had, and even if you like placed well, when it's all over, you're like, I don't know, it just didn't really satisfy me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had races where I've come in second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever, and compared to races I've won, and I've been more proud of my lower place races just because of like where I went mentally and what I had to do to reach that result. So absolutely hear you there.
That's so interesting.
And the other funny thing you said earlier was like, there's all these, fit people and tight booties around. And what's funny is like, I've been in this world for so many years, like I forget that that's abnormal. So like I've brought friends to races who don't normally race necessarily, and they're like, damn, look at all these girls. And I was like, oh yeah. Like, everyone's in sports bras and like booty shorts. Like, that people don't walk around like that normally. Oh, they don't. Oh, okay.
Welcome, brothers.
Yeah. So it's funny. Like it becomes, to me, it's like normal, and I forget that it's abnormal to people on the outside. So it's kind of something funny, but.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, and I like every family gathering that I have. I have my mom has a few sisters, and they all live locally, and they all have 3, 4, 5 kids. So big family. When we all get together, it's weird having everyone ask me questions or like have these exclamations or get their praise for these things I've done, and I'm like, just, it's weird. You guys don't understand. I'm just running. If you guys did it too, you'd be like, oh yeah, we're just out there having a good time. But it's the whole other world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be at work and they'll be like, oh, what do you got this week? And I'll be like, I got like a 5-hour OCR, and then blah, blah. And they're like, what? You're running for 5 hours? They're like, oh yeah, it's a short one. It's not a big deal. And they're like, oh my goodness. It's like, all right. But
I know, and then you hear their jokes like, I can't even hold my beer for 5 hours.
But you start falling deeper into this endurance world, and like, your friends in person, and also your friends online, it becomes, the extreme becomes normal, right? Like, the Atkins or Ryan Atkins and Ray are off in Fiji right now doing like a adventure race, and it's like, oh, cool, yeah. To me, that's like quote unquote normal, but it's really on the edge of what people are actually doing. So it's kind of funny.
100%, man. That stuff was super fringe to me, it was like 5 years ago, but that's just that scale of relativity that ever shifts with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is really interesting, because that's that goes the same for kind of like we were just touching on. You might not have a good race, and it might feel real good about it, or you win and you don't feel that great about it. And I mean, gosh, if 15 or 20-year-old us were looking at ourselves now and be like, dude, you're crushing it, man. I can't believe you're doing that. But the fact is we are where we are, and a performance now, regardless of if it was awesome, to our 20-year-old self, if it's not, it might just not seem so great to us where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember interviewing Hobie Call a couple of years ago right after the first OCR World Championships, and it was on the podium. It was John Albin, Ryan Atkins, Hobie Call, and I was like super excited. I was talking to Hobie, and I'm like, "Oh, you came in third! What a great result!" And he was like, he was like disappointed. I was like, here I am. I'm like, you came in third in the world, and like the two
dude, yeah, right, man.
The two guys that beat you. I mean, I don't. Ryan was a couple years into his success, but I at that point I'd never heard of Jonathan Albin. But I mean, those two dudes. That whole podium is legends, right? Like, I mean, ridiculous.
They are definitely legends.
So anyway, yeah. So you get, you find out you're good at OCR. Why, take me, I guess, through the next step. What was your next set of races? Why did you focus on Spartan necessarily over some of the other series, etc.?
Dude, it was pretty funny. So the next race that I did, April 28th, 2017, I did the Spartan Beast. May 5th, just like a week later, I did that North Face Endurance Challenge 50K. And then the next month, it was June, I think it was Tuxedo, that there was a Spartan weekend. And this time I signed up for Elite. And it was a sprint, like it was quick, but that venue, they had you go up and down the mountain twice, so it was good elevation for the length. I did that race and I felt so good, and I was just speeding, and then someone yelled out like, "You're in 5th." I was like, "What? Holy crap!" I just remember like picking up the pace with energy, and I didn't catch 4th, but I held 5th. And when the race was over, I like stuck around, and like the first, second, third, 4th place guys were all hanging out. They were like, "Yo," they came over to me like, "Who are you? Where'd you come from? What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just, this is my second race." They're like, "What? This is your second race, man?" And then some guy mentioned OCR, and I was like, "What's OCR?" And they all looked at me like, "What?" I never heard the acronym before. Yeah. They're like, "You got to be kidding me, man. You don't even know what OCR stands for." I'm like, "Oh, obstacle course racing, duh, dude." So I felt like a dumb, but but that was a fun intro, laying down a little bit of shock. But I stuck around, and the podium went on the podium awards, and the first place guy, I was standing next to one of his friends, and he says, "Man, $500 right there." I look at him like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we just won $500." I'm like, "There's money in this? People win money?" So I was like, "Holy crap, that's awesome, dude!" And then like, the second he said that, I just have a flood of all of those dreams I had when I was a kid of like professional athletes. I was like, "Holy shit, this can happen." So, so when he said that, I was already into obstacle course racing, OCR. But then I realized like, okay, now I feel like I can train for this and not be, not be looked at by others like I'm some fanatic or crazed by fitness. It's like when when you can put the label professional on a sport, it no longer becomes like that hobby you spend too much time doing, that takes you away from friends and family. It's like, no, this can be a job. And I've heard professional racers talk about it, how it's not super glamorous. And for all I know, it's not. It's stressful that you have to win, or do super well, or for the sake of sponsors and for the race earnings. But it's super cool to strive for. And it's just a dream that I've always kind of had in the back of my head growing up, was being a pro athlete, which is hilarious considering I was thinking that while I'm smoking cigarettes, like not making a change about my bad habits for 7 years. But so after that, I started training a little bit harder. I started reading more books. I picked up this one book called Primal Endurance by Mark Sisson and Brad Kearns, and they're old like triathlon legends back in the 70s and 80s when guys were wearing bright pink Speedos, and that was the thing. And I read that book, and that kind of changed my paradigm on running and just training in general, that's a great short read for anyone that wants to check that out. And they were really just, I mean, the word primal, right? It's like take these ancient ways of living and kind of adapt them to the modern day. So these old modalities with a modern twist on them. And I was super into it. So I looked more into it. And as you said before, I am a primal health coach. So I went all the way down the rabbit hole. I'm like, I want to learn everything about this that I possibly can. So I hunkered down for a few months while I was running, learned about primal health coaching, which definitely helped me with my own training. And let's see, where did that lead me? Oh, that's right. That led me to a sprained ankle. And so I didn't have much of a 2017 season because ironically, I was doing a training run in the Catskills, having a fantastic day, enjoying my new pair of shoes. I was like, yeah, these shoes are going to help me do really well. And I was envisioning throwing the spear. I remember it like it's yesterday, man. I was envisioning myself throwing the spear. Don't do this, folks. If you're running, be in the running. Don't think about throwing a spear while you're running. And my foot just hit the ground in a spot that wasn't solid. It was autumn, or there were leaves on the ground, at least in this area. And I sprained my ankle pretty bad, which put me out for a few months. But those few months gave me time to become a certified trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, which furthered my knowledge for my own personal training, as well as now I train others. But yeah, I've just kind of gotten like a little nerded out with this sport. I just think it's really awesome, the potential of the human body and the mind. And actually, when you were mentioning the sponsor, those the little electronic things you like put on your legs. What was that company again?
Compex.
Yeah. Looking at stuff like that, I think that stuff's so rad, right? Those and things like the Normatec boots. And that stuff's kind of like high tech, but it's super, well, at least like the Compex, that's super affordable. The Normatec's a little out there, but
yeah,
that stuff's pretty cool. And but yeah, I got super hyped up on all of the things that you can do to improve performance. Like, there's the basic things, right? Super simple things like ice baths, things that have been around for a super long time, and heat and manners of eating or not eating and different things, that you can eat, sleep, all of the things that contribute to us functioning at our best. And the rad thing has been being the guinea pig and seeing all of the races you listed earlier. The 2018 season was a great showing for myself that everything that I was doing was working, which really stoked me up. And that's when I really got on this train of coaching other people. So I'm kind of went off on a tangent here, but talking about just like the progress of things that I've been doing. Got off a little bit on the roll there. I think the hot chocolate's getting to me. I was making hot chocolate before we got on the phone. And I got 2 squares of 90% cocoa and like 3 scoops of cocoa powder, a little bit of vanilla, and a little maple syrup to tie it all together.
well, sounds delicious. Now, let's talk about some of your training. You kind of mentioned it briefly already, but I'd say take me through what your training looks like now, and then let's talk about, what you've changed from 2 years ago. So take me through what your training looks like now.
Right now, my training mostly looks like a good amount of small runs throughout the week. Like my driveway at the place that I rent, I live on a farm. And this driveway is 0.6 miles long, so it's really easy to do laps out and back. There's just like a few rolling hills in it. So it's really easy to do 2, 4, 6 miles here every day or every other day. I've actually done a few half marathons in this driveway, just kind of getting in the zone, just looping back and forth and going to that numb mental place, but that's cool. So a lot of I use like a 5-zone system. And so like zone 1 is practically recovery. It's super duper chill. I do a lot of that. Real easy to breathe, real easy to talk, super duper relaxed. And I like to throw in a lot of strides.
at the end of those runs. And then a lot of people benefit from different running. Some people respond better to high intensity stuff. Some people respond better to the long, slow stuff. I found that I respond really well to long mountain runs, where I spend a lot of time kind of like in the zone 3, which is in like the lactic threshold area. So it's not quite race pace, but it's comfortably hard. And I also really like where my mind goes for that, which there's a lot to be said for. But if I'm healthy, I'll do a long mountain run every weekend. I got a really good few runs these past few weeks, going out to the mountains, parking in one trailhead, riding my bike 25 miles to the other trailhead, running 22 miles with 8K a gain back to the car, taking a cold bath in the creek, and then going to pick my bike up and then going to smash a bunch of food. But it's for the most part, it's been at least 4 or 5 runs a week, 1 to 2 long runs, one of those runs being around 20 miles, the other one being typically 10, 11, 13. And I'll do the gym once or twice. I teach classes at this one gym, and so typically I'll incorporate some kind of CrossFit movements, a lot of compound stuff, and I'll do it in an interval fashion with like row machine, dumbbells, thrusters, snatches, deadlifts. That stuff I really enjoy. I do a lot of balance work, and actually something that I do less, but I started to pick up more because I heard this great quote, and it wasn't even from an athlete. It was from a businessman, and he said, "When you get successful, don't change what you're doing. Remember what made you successful, and do those, and keep incorporating those things." And that was an epiphany for me. I was like, man, I have kind of noticed some aspects of my performance being off, and it had everything to do with my balance. It was like I hadn't been slacklining. I hadn't been doing as much BOSU work. I hadn't been doing as much just single leg work as I was doing back in the 2018 season, both before and after, after I did or got my sprained ankle. So I sprained that ankle, and I started thinking about like rehab and all that balance work I did, not just to get back to where I was, but I kept doing it. It brought me way beyond where I was in terms of balance and having really stable joints, which, I mean, that's just absolutely integral to being able to take a beating for any length of time. Because if you're doing an endurance event and something like a muscle fatigues, you're going to start losing, your gait's going to go out of whack. You're going to start punch strain on other muscles, and then that's going to go into the joints, and you're just going to start falling apart piece by piece. So stability work is something that I've started incorporating more of again myself, and I really enjoy it. I used to do a lot more yoga. I don't do as much yoga anymore. I used to do that twice a week, but instead I do more focused mobility work. So instead of going through a yoga practice that, a class will have set up for me, I'll go right into the moves that I know I personally need, like opening up my upper body more, my shoulders, helping me with compound movements and just having like healthier shoulders. So that's where I am right now. I kind of had a bad winter last year because after World's Toughest, I just wasn't feeling too sharp. My Achilles was like a little bothered, but more than anything, I was just really drained. I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I finally got blood work, and I didn't run a mile for almost 2 months, I think, or a month and a half. Like finally around Christmas, I went for like a 2-mile run, and I was so dead still. So it turns out for months, I wasn't really able to train, but part of it was laziness, and the other part of it was this non-iron related anemia.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, anemia? What are you talking about? I'm healthy as can be. I was in total denial. Like, how can that be? But the doctors didn't have a solid reason for why it was occurring. So I started just making sure I was getting good sleep. I went online, looked stuff up, took more vitamin D, more B vitamins, and that kind of spruced up my energy. But something was going on there, and that just kind of gave me a late start coming into the 2019 season. So my volume wasn't really where I wanted it to be, but I'm starting to pick it up now, and I feel like my fitness now is about where it was back in November last year when I was doing 70 miles a week, and I was in my top fitness going into World's Toughest. So I haven't been as consistent this year as I wanted to, but yeah, ideally going through this winter, I'm gonna grab a pair of skis, do a lot of base building, low intensity, building up a lot of aerobic base, and do a lot of strength workouts. And then going into the next year, 2020, come February and March, I'll pick up the intensity quite a bit, and hopefully slingshot into the season with Spartan. Probably try out a series, maybe national series. I just want to compete more with some of these big contenders.
Right on. Well, it sounds like you got a good periodization, long-term plan there, which sounds great. I think a lot of people just haphazardly throw miles at the wall and, don't really plan things out well in advance. So I know personally when I actually write my schedule out and actually put things in place and, break things down into macro and micro cycles, I feel like I perform better because it's logically oriented versus me just trying to figure it out on the fly, which I do more than I should. I'll admit that. And the, World's Toughest Mudder, I mean, that knocks me on my ass every year. So, I mean, that is just a large stress to your system physiologically. And, not besides just being obviously really long and hard, the conditions are always terrible. Like after Vegas every year, I would develop this awful cough, right? Like from inhaling dust, and who else knows what's in that desert environment. And then this year in Atlanta was just freezing, right? Like it took me a month before I could feel my fingertips again. It was just like
what?
So.
Hey, how many Tough Mudders or World's Toughest have you done?
I'm at 5. Yeah.
Nice.
So I did the 4 Vegas and 1 Atlanta.
They did 4 years at Vegas?
Yeah. 3 New Jersey, 4 Vegas, 1 Atlanta.
I was kind of hoping to do Vegas, but I will say Atlanta was pretty rad. I was down with it.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about those events is I feel like there's always something that makes it very unique. I didn't go to New Jersey, but I mean, I know one of the years in New Jersey, they were literally breaking ice like in the water on some of the water obstacles. 2014 in Vegas, there was that awful windstorm. It was just insane. Which like that was my first year, and I was like, they're definitely going to close the course. Like, there's no way they're letting people continue on in this. I was like, I'll just make it through the next lap, and then it'll be fine. And I remember coming through the med check, and they're like, when were you born? And you answer, and they're like, okay, I'll see you next lap. And I was like, are you seriously? Are we seriously doing this? All right. He's like, all right, well, F it, let's do it. And I went back out on the course and kept getting worse and eventually cleared up. The 1 year in Vegas, it was just super nice and the mileage was super good. And then, this past year in Atlanta was just freaking cold. I mean, ice forming on everything, so.
Yeah, that's sweet. I remember going through, it was their obstacle gauntlet. I forget what their official name for that was. Maybe they called it the gauntlet, but it was like the rings and then like the traverse with the knobs and then like this, then monkey rings and whatnot. I remember going across that and feeling the ice under my fingers like, holy shit, this is real right now? This obstacle is open? It turns out they closed it like right after I went through it. But I never experienced that before. And I was thinking to myself, man, this is going to be a long night.
So speaking of Toughest Mudder, my question was going to be, how did you get involved in Toughest Mudder? Because obviously you have a lot of Spartan results. You're doing well there. You're winning money. And, when did you start adding tougher mudders or toughest mudders rather into your schedule?
So 2012, just a couple years after I graduated from high school, I had this friend, and at the time, he's still fit. He's an arborist that climbs trees, but back in the day, he did a little more BMX skateboarding with me, and he kind of ran here and there. And his aunt and uncle and dad, they did Tough Mudders, and they asked him to go, and he asked me to go. At the time, I was smoking cigarettes. I wasn't like really fit or anything. I was kind of like doing some gym stuff. But I thought, oh, that looks cool. Yeah, hell, I'll go do it. And at that time, 2012, it wasn't competitive at all. Like they sent us off, and this was actually at Raceway Park, New Jersey. Nice. So that was pretty much the lap that I think everyone did at World's Toughest, or at least a similar. And it was just a rolling dirt bike course. And I remember I'm actually wearing the same shoes right now. Well, the same type of shoes. I keep buying this like $25 pair of like barefoot imitation shoes. Anyways, I wore those to the Tough Mudder, so they had no traction at all, which is hilarious because I was that guy. Like when I'm running an obstacle course race these days, and I'm in the mountains and I see someone wearing a pair of like tennis shoes, I'm like, oh, you're learning today. You're never gonna wear tennis shoes again. But I was that guy too. I was wearing no grip shoes, sliding all over the place. But that particular race was so crowded and there was so much energy, so muddy, and there was like the electroshock therapy and everything. But I remember those obstacles being like really fun. And that's something that I really appreciate about Tough Mudder and some of these other obstacle course races. I really enjoy the competition at Spartan, and I can appreciate the, to a degree, the standardization of obstacles, but I also really appreciate the change up and the creativity that goes into some of these other obstacle course racing companies. And Tough Mudder, I just really loved their upper body obstacles, like Funky Monkey and Hong Kong, and just like their monkey bar setups. So I found out that, or I remember seeing World's Toughest on the telly a while after that. I was like, oh, Tough Mudder got competitive. Like, that's rad. And again, I was still smoking cigarettes. I was like, oh, maybe one day I'll do something like that. And then after doing the Spartan, I found out that Tough Mudder was doing some competitive stuff. I was like, oh, that's rad. I really enjoyed Tough Mudder. And, I looked at what the earnings were for, if you did well. I was like, oh, that's, really, I'll be honest. When I go to a race, the first thing I'm thinking of is like, can I win my money back? I hope so. Well, let's go for it. So, because it's an expensive sport.
Yeah, it is.
And, I live pretty frugally. So it's definitely a plus. It's a huge bonus. But I saw that they were doing tougher. Was it toughest Mudder? That was at the 8 hour back in 2018.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. I saw that. I thought, okay, well, the furthest I've ever gone so far was 31 miles. 50K. I was like, let's do the math. Maybe I can do 40 miles. So like, all right, this is the next step. Overnight, nighttime, hell yeah, I can take runs through the night with headlamps. Man, that was the toughest Mudder at 508 International, Massachusetts, in June last year. Was maybe the most fun event I've ever done. That was just like running through the night, the obstacles. I had so many friends there at that point that I had met through different races. That race was just freaking awesome.
Yeah, so that was the first time I had ever seen you, because I typically don't race Spartan, and I live in the middle of the country, so I'm typically not at that many races in the Northeast, even though my family's from that area. And I remember being on Toughest Mudder, and like there was one section where you actually like you went out and you kind of came back and you were essentially running parallel, in opposite directions. And I remember seeing you near the front, and I'm like, that guy's gonna blow up. Like I'll let him go. Because there was a I usually start off slow and pick people off, but you have a very unique look because you're, tattoos, mohawk, right? And I remember being like, he'll blow up. And then I remember you laughing at me later and being like, I guess that plan did not work out so well. And you did well. I think you came in second or third on that one.
Yeah, I was stoked on that. I was like in sixth most of the night. And then at like 5 a.m., I got into fifth, and then fourth. And then with like an hour and a half left to go, I passed Tyler McCready in third. And coming into the pit, literally the second place guy came into the pit 10 seconds in front of me. And he was like ready to stop. And I remember I came right up next to him because we were both in like the quick pit area. And I gave him a tap on the back and I said, like, hey, bud. And he looked at me and then looked at his crew. And his crew was like, dude, go. And he's like, oh, shit, that guy's actually right behind me. He thought I was just like, I don't know, just some person. He'd never met me before. He had no idea. So he starts running, and I was feeling so amped up. Like, I got an hour left to do this last lap. Like, I'm going to get him. So I like sucked down some nutrition and chased after him and ended up getting that last lap in with like 28 seconds before the cutoff. Oh man. Yeah, it doesn't get better than that. I was so stoked on it.
Nice. Yeah.
So that put a really good taste in my mouth.
I think that was my worst race of 2018, but yeah, it's good to see you do well there. So
thanks, man. What happened to you?
I think I always race a lot, and I don't know, my body, I honestly can't remember what that race was sandwiched between, but I just know I hit my normal mileage, like 40. I think I did 40 at that one. I usually typically get between 40 and 45, and I just
Nice.
I don't know, I just wasn't feeling good, and I still ran the whole time. I think I came in 15th or so, but yeah, not a bad, just one of those days.
You got 15th with 40 miles.
Yeah.
I would have like 40 miles is solid. I would have thought that would have put you up in the top 10.
Yeah, typically. So like I said, typically I run between 40 and 45, and I'm usually, somewhere in the top 10 is what I'm normally at. Yeah, that's the only time I've fallen out of the top 10 is that race, and I did Toughest Mudder UK that same year, and the obstacles were just they were easy, which does not help me because I'm good at obstacles. Like there was one upper body obstacle per lap, and everything else was crawls and wall and mud movement, water crossing and shit like that.
Oh, I hate it.
So it was versus at that time, Toughest Mudder, it was like some of the events had like 4 upper body per lap. I wasn't real happy with my UK Tough Mudder experience. I think, after that I was like, all right, next time I go overseas, I'm doing a race series that they don't have in the US. Because then otherwise I'm critiquing it and comparing it to what the US version is, right? Like even subconsciously, you just can't help it. Versus if you go do something that's completely different, I think you get, a different experience versus just like the same stuff rebranded. But
yeah, that's interesting how the same, like one company will have, they'll operate differently in different places. Like I was watching a video from Spartan, and they have the European Mountain Series, and one of the final rigs, it was this multi-rig that was 3 times as long as any over here with a bar, with monkey rings, with like a horizontal ladder. And I was like, yo, bring that over here. That looks super fun. Why are they holding out?
yeah. It's just, they franchise them out, is my understanding, to other countries and kind of let them use their brand and their logo and incorporate some of their obstacles. But at the same time, they have a certain amount of latitude to do what they want, within that country. And because theoretically, the people running it theoretically know that market better than the Spartan executives in America. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, what do you think of NORAM? Talking about like upper body obstacles and the plethora of them versus the big lack of them.
I loved it. I'm good at obstacles, so I always prefer. To me, harder is always better to me. As a business, though, I understand there needs to be a balance. But I thought they did a good job. The 3K. I know the 3K and the team, and I thought the 3K, the obstacles were just spaced out real nice. Where I didn't look at my watch once, which means to me that I was constantly doing an obstacle or looking at the next obstacle. But I think they do a good job. The obstacles are typically not like each individual obstacle is typically not super hard, but when you put them in back to back, I think it pumps people out pretty good. So,
yo, you're telling me. Word on the street is they're taking away the chicken wing from the gibbon, which was the 4th of that gauntlet.
Yep.
The 4th obstacle of that super grip intensive gauntlet.
So yeah, I didn't use the chicken wing. I'm okay with that. I think just if you're gonna make a rule like that, it has to be universal across all the obstacles, right? Then you shouldn't be able to use chicken wing on the monkey bars or anything else. Then that's just my 2 cents. But
yeah, well, it's interesting because as you said, there has to be this middle ground. Like it has to be difficult enough for the elites, yet attainable to a degree for kind of like that median person.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't make it so everybody can do it. It's got to be a challenge. But that actually, I wonder how the sport's going to progress, and I wonder if they're going to go to doing things like the pro lanes.
Yeah, Battlefrog tried it. So there's been some precedence for that, and you could do a pro lane. I personally like at the North American and the OCR World Championships, my personal preference is that I like that it's universal. So at the end of the day, a band is a band, right? Like whether you're 50-plus woman or you're a 30-year-old pro male, I like that it means the same thing. But for most things, there's arguments for both sides that you can go either way. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, I thought NORAM, I do think NORAM was really balanced. I guess when I said that, I was thinking more towards like Spartan. And if you talk to any elite, there's this resounding, oh, they're easy. The obstacles hardly slow you down. No one's really failing obstacles anymore. It takes a rainy day and some carelessness.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see how Spartan increases the challenge.
At
least for the elites.
I mean, I think it's a good option. I like that Battle Frog had the different lanes. They had elite, intermediate, and beginner, and I think that's a good option.
I'm jealous. I heard Battle Frog was the shit, but I never did it. I wasn't around then.
Yeah, they're sorely missed. So, but
I hear that. What happened with them?
They spent. I mean, the simple answer is they spent more money than they were taking in too quickly, right? So they sponsored the Fiesta Bowl, which had to cost. Low estimates were 10 million, high estimates were 20 million. They gave away $1 million in prize money in a single year. They were also, when they were giving out that $1 million prize money, they were paying like 10 deep, which is pretty sweet. So that's just one of the reasons everyone loved them.
Damn, man, yeah.
But it was attracting people. It was attracting a lot of people. The problem is it's attracting the 10% of people that make up the elite and competitive wave, right? So like it's attracting this hardcore community that was willing to go to all their races, which is why everyone loves them. But the thing that makes a business sustainable in OCR is the 90% of the open waves. And it just takes some time to get that return on investment. And they were putting more money in faster than they thought, or they were putting in more money than they were getting in return. And when you looked at the numbers and compared them, it was like, oh, they're definitely losing money. The question was, how long can they keep it up? And the answer was about 9 months of 2016, because they closed late August, 8 months, I guess. But yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I guess when I'm sure you recognize too, when at a Spartan race, you see there is, of course, lots of those six packs, lots of the fine booties, but there's also a broader range of person. There's more people that apparently haven't been, doing it for a long time. It's getting it's going deeper into the couch, it's getting more of the couch potatoes. There's something about their marketing. There's something about the way that they set it up that is reaching more towards the yet to be athletic audience, to put it correctly, politically correctly.
And I love that about our sport, that it can pull in these unbelievable athletes and at the same time, get someone pulled off their couch and walk the entire thing and do 50% of the obstacles, and they feel good about themselves at the end. They've gotten off their couch, make themselves a little bit healthier. So I think that's pretty unique aspect.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I know some people that come across the finish line after doing 120, 160, or 180 burpees, and like, I feel like you worked harder than I did. That sucks. That is a lot of burpees.
No doubt on that one.
That's exhausting. Something that I wanted to ask you earlier about World's Toughest, because I've kind of always thought about the military, and especially the past few years, a lot of my fitness has also been inspired by the idea of at least being like military ready. I'm like, okay, I want to be able to, do 100 push-ups, or however many pull-ups, run a certain speed. I want to be like special forces ready. Like I use that as a measurement of fitness and athleticism. And I was wondering, when it comes to an event like World's Toughest, these 24-hour events where you really get into a grind, especially mentally, how that compares to like your military experience.
In a lot of ways it's the same, and then a lot of ways it's different. So the nice thing about a race like World's Toughest is it's 24 hours, and at 24 hours it ends, right? Like, and you can't stop that clock. Every second that goes by, I can't stop it. So that there's a definitive endpoint. And at the end of the 24 hours, I go back to my hotel room and I take a shower and I lay on my bed and I eat In-N-Out burger, right? When you go to something like Special Forces Selection or the Q course, they're typically weeks to months in length. So it's just that like persistent grind. And it's not, individual hours are typically not as bad. If it was as hard, if Special Forces Selection was as hard as people made it up in their minds, no one would pass. Same thing with Ranger School. But it's just a very long process. And individual events, parts of it are very hard, but they only typically last a couple hours, and then it goes back to, kind of lower key type stress. So it's just kind of the long grind, I would say, that gets to you. I went to Ranger School, and the course is 2 months long. It's broken into 3 phases. The bad part is if you fail a phase, you can recycle. So you can, if you went straight through, you're there if you went straight through, you're there 2 months. I did the first phase several times. I was there about 5 months. So less desirable. So that really, I feel like that specific experience, which was absolutely terrible, and I highly do not recommend that, made me a lot mentally tougher. Because when, fast forward a couple of years, when I went to Special Forces Selection, they're like, all right, it's 3 weeks long. And I was like, 3 weeks. It's like I was in Ranger School for 5 months. I was like, I can do 3 weeks, whatever you're going to do to me. And it was physically absolutely brutal. I may have said this on the podcast before, but if I hadn't physically been there to do some of the events that we did, I would, and someone told me like the weights and the distances you moved, I'd be like, no, you're lying. That's too much weight. That's too far. And, but no, it was there. I lost 20 pounds in 10 days while I was there. And it's not like I'm a big guy, and I was eating 3 meals a day. So you're just churning through calories, right? And individual parts again are typically not that bad. It's just that you're always moving, you're always carrying something. You're doing land navigation for multiple hours a day. So just walking through the woods with your backpack. No one's yelling at you at that point. You're just walking, but that burns a lot of calories when you're carrying 60 pounds on your back. So.
And also it's on you to accomplish, because you're on a mission, right? You have to complete, you're in school right now, and you have to complete this and get an A+.
Yeah. So and there's a lot of internal stress because you're putting the pressure on yourself to perform. And one of the things that makes it hard is they don't tell you how you're doing, which drives people crazy, right? So you'll
drive me crazy, man.
There are certain things, they'll do a run and they'll be like, all right, when I tell you to begin, you start running, but they don't tell you how far it is. So people don't know how to pace themselves. But you can see where you kind of end up there. But on other things, they call them team week events, where essentially you carry things over a long distance, and there's only your team at that specific moment. So you have no one to compare it to. They don't tell you how you do. You finish and they're like, all right, you're done. And they'll jot a bunch of things down in their notebook while staring at you. And then they'll be like, okay, go on to the next event. No, good job, no shitty job. It's just like, okay, next event. And you just move on. You're like, okay, I think I'm doing
That sounds
well.
awful, yet I can totally see that tactic though, because you're just constantly thinking in your head like, man, I got to make sure I am on point. I have nothing to gauge to, so I just have to assume that I'm performing like shit. So do better.
Right. So and you'll see some guys, they just lose it. They can't handle that no feedback. So it's
Can't handle the silent treatment.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
That answer the question pretty good?
Yeah, 100%, man. I'm just I could hear you talk about that stuff for a while. I've always been that's kind of like the second dream, is being in the special forces. So I'm 28. I'm kind of coming at the end. I'm coming close to the end of my ability to do that.
Yeah, I think the cutoff's 35, if I remember correctly. So.
Yeah, it's just tough to make the decision. It's okay, do I have a future in obstacle course racing? And where does my happiest life lie? I look at guys like, Killian. Well, how old are you, Evan?
I'm 37.
Okay, so you're the same age as Killian.
I
You're
think
the same
I'm.
age
I think
as
he's like
Killian, I think.
35. I thought he was a little bit younger. I might be wrong. All right.
He's gonna hear this and be like, "I ain't that old, son." But yeah, I don't know how long he was in, or what he would have to say for how the military helped shape his obstacle course racing career. But it's like they don't have to be totally exclusive. One will help the other, at least can very help the other. So
Yeah, and
so it's cool to have that on the side burner.
I'm not gonna. I might be putting words in Killian's mouth here, but so he had a unique experience because a lot of his things he did while in the military were also like athletic programs having to do with the military. So he did best ranger competition, I think like 3 years in a row or 3 years total, which essentially lets you, depending on job dependent, lets you work out for a large portion. And then he was on the Army had like an actual Spartan race team for a year or two. He was on that. My path's a little bit different. I did all my, I would say, quote unquote, cool military stuff for about the first decade. And then once I started sitting behind a desk, I got into obstacle course racing. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, but it really depends on your job and what you're doing. When I was still on a team doing stuff, this obstacle course racing, I'd have to fit it in where I could if I was into that at the time. But it's not super conducive to it because you go to training for a couple weeks and you're, living wherever and you're eating whatever. And then you deploy to a country and, a lot of the deployments, the running there it's just not desirable. Like if you live on a base that's like 100 meters by 30 meters, you're not like, oh boy, the treadmill again, or I can run around this tiny compound. So,
yeah, all these military bases are gonna have to get Pelotons. The treadmills that like have the screen where you're this like animated person running with other people.
Yeah. And I mean, they are getting better.
Of,
a lot of them, there's a brand or a series called Alpha Warrior that's based out of Texas, and they started partnering with a lot of the military bases, and there's actually an Alpha Warrior rig, like a full up, essentially like a platinum rig type thing inside of like one gym on the big military bases. It's funny, every time I go, so I was at Fort Bragg a couple of weeks ago, and they have this enormous, beautiful rig. I mean, thousands and thousands of dollars spent on this thing. And I'm the only person in the gym that ever uses it, period. Right? Like everyone else is just laying on the floor, stretching underneath it. And I'm like swinging over their heads. And it's like, oh, you guys have such a good piece of equipment here and you're just stretching underneath it. Like you're killing me here. So, no.
Yeah, whatever, bro. I'm going to be doing more deadlifts.
Yeah. Yeah. People love,
not everyone's tuned into their primal monkey.
No, people love bodybuilding.com in the military. Just love it. Can't get enough of bodybuilding.com.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. Understandable.
All right, we're gonna start wrapping things up here. Before we go though, a couple of more questions. One, let's talk about your future. So what do you big goals or plans in the future? Are you looking at more FKTs? You looking at, you mentioned Everest earlier, or focusing on obstacle course racing? What do we got?
I am going to focus mostly on obstacle course racing. I'm going to probably work more on endurance. You probably won't see me looking to, win every sprint out there. I'm going to be moving into longer distances because I'm looking at some of these races like Leadville, Hard Rock, Western States, UTMB, some of these big races. And I mean, the part of the fact is that you have to apply to get in. You have to kind of build your credentials just to get in. And I like that. I like that it's exclusive, and I want to kind of earn my turn. And I just love the headspace that I can get into running at length. So something that'll help me get there definitely is just improving my running. And in doing so, I think that a good goal for next year on that journey to getting better at some of these bigger races would be something like the National Series, where there's a focus on supers and beasts, and there's a diversity of land. I'm not the best. It's been illuminated to me, especially at like NORAM and West Virginia on some of these less technical, more open running races that it's not my strong suit. I was never the fastest 5K. My best 5K is like a 17:06, and there, you know, some of these guys out there, like the Ryans, they're all these guys are in like the low mid 15s, and there's something to be said for that and how that helps you on, or that'll show itself on a greater range of terrain. So I do a lot of mountain stuff. I love the mountains, but I'm definitely going to work on my, if not flat running, just less technical running. You know, I'm going to run more runnable trails and get my form down and get my speed up. So I think the national series will be cool next year. The prospect of being in a series, and because I haven't done that yet. I've kind of just done this whole thing where, oh, I feel pretty good, I'll do this race. But I think that'll help me organize my own training, and that structure will be it'll be different. It'll be interesting, and it'll be a good challenge for me, and potentially help me to, I don't know, pull in, if I do well, you know, doing a series, something that gets a little more media coverage, you know, that could be good for me as far as making this more of a, you know, short-term career. But that's out there. That's then. So I'll be working towards that. You'll expect to see me in a series in 2020. But for now, Killington is this weekend. Super excited about that. You know, Killington's that race that everyone talks about. It's like you have to do it. If you're a Spartan, you have to have done Killington. So I didn't do it last year. It was sold out by the time I went to sign up. This year, I'm in, and I am very excited to do, I think it's like 6,600 feet of elevation gain. So my quads are not going to appreciate that, but I will.
Awesome. Well, best wishes this coming weekend. By the time this airs, you'll have been long done with Killington. But so this is probably air another week or two, depending on what else we have on the schedule. But yeah, best wishes at Killington. Cool. Where can people find you social media wise, and if you offer personal training, stuff like that?
Oh, appreciate that, man. Yeah, my Instagram, my very official business place, my Instagram is Ja Shua Ried. It's JA_SHUA_RIED. Ja Shua Ried. And there I am. And yeah, if anyone's looking to get some training either from Evan or myself, we're out here in the world.
Right on. Do you do online training or just in person or both? What's your MO there?
I do both. I'm really digging the online because what's really cool about that is the fact that I can reach a much greater amount of people, and you know, no matter where they are. And with things like Facebook and Instagram and just using the phone, it's easy to exchange messages and videos to give instruction and see how other people are doing. I always prefer doing in person, but it's a busy world out there. So as a matter of convenience for both parties, the internet is pretty awesome for that.
Right on. Are we going to see you at any more World's Toughest this year or no?
Dude,
lack of prize money.
I want to do World's Toughest this year, but I don't think I'm going to make it down there. It's just a financial thing, you know?
Yeah.
And if it's going to put me off for, you know, another month or month and a half, you know, it just interrupts the training a little bit. I mean, in my head, the fun is worth it. I mean, it was such a good time, you know, but if I'm not going to go, I'll just justify it with, I'll have a better November, December training time.
Right on. Yeah. I justify, it gives me an excuse to take a good off season. That's my justification. I just destroy my body for the weekend. And then I'm like, all right, don't need to run for a while. Just enjoy, you know, some strength training and taking a break from the whole running process. So come back a little bit harder.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. You at least went and did strength training. I just sat on a couch.
I love doing strength training in the off season. It's my jam there. So
what's your favorite weightlifting move?
It's deadlifts. Although I don't do them as much as I used to, but I used to I'm a pretty small guy. I'm like, you know, anywhere between 150 and 165, depending on what I was getting ready for, and I would just crush. Like my PR is a triple body weight deadlift, so it was like 150.
Damn.
It was 155, and I did what's triple that? 465. Yeah.
Damn, son.
So, I had a belt on. I had wrist straps, so it wasn't pure grip, but.
Oh, okay. All right. Then I can take a little pride in that. I got like a 2.5 body weight. I was like,
yeah.
What was that? I was like 170 at a 435, and I didn't use straps or a belt. Although I felt it. I was like, not saying my form was great. I'm just saying it left the floor.
Yeah, I don't lift anywhere close to that heavy now. It's just the risk becomes too high, especially with like when I do a lot of run training. I feel like my form starts slipping, especially if I do a back deadlift or something in the afternoon. So I deadlift occasionally now. So my deadlift is probably, I don't know, if I tried to 1 rep max it now, I don't know, probably could get 315, and I would be scared to go any higher. I don't know. So
for sure got that. For sure.
All right. Well, since
dope, man. Yo, I appreciate talking to you, brother.
Yeah, well, normally when we have 3 people on the podcast, we do tell us one thing about yourself that people would be surprised to know about you. But you seems like a pretty interesting dude. So even though I don't have 3 people, I'm going to ask that question. So share with us something that people would be surprised to know about you. And I did not prep you for this question. So
dude, you know what? Oh, hilarious. Because I've had people say to me, I mean, almost anything I do, people look at me and say, not surprised. It's like, oh, you do that? If anyone's going to do it, it's you. So I feel like I can just get away with just about anything. And people would look at it and be like, God, that just makes sense right there. I'd probably say the thing that might surprise people the most is that I fucking love cooking. And like, I'm pretty good at it. Whether it's like steak or pancakes, that shit's really fun. All the other stuff they probably expect. Like I like to be dirty, or like I'll pick food off the floor, or walk around naked. All that shit sounds pretty normal.
Right on.
Oh, I'll tell you what. What people really don't expect? Music. I can play Moonlight Sonata on the piano, and I am obsessed with some of those classical songs. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, not expecting that. Those are 2 good ones.
And gotcha. See?
Yeah,
knew it.
That's good stuff. All right, we're gonna wrap.
Yo, I gotta ask you, man. It's not fair. No.
Okay,
I get to ask you, man. What people? Yeah.
So I mean, I do this on every episode.
What would I expect about you?
I do this on every episode, so we're running out of interesting things to say. I usually try to link it to what the guest says. So for the cooking one, I will go with, I am not a good cook. My wife is a trained pastry chef, though, so she can literally make anything, like creme brulee. And
Evan, you made it. You made it. You picked a good one. Hell yeah.
The worst part is, people yell at me all the time for this, is I never take advantage of it because I try to eat healthy. So she'll make this like gorgeous cake, and I'll be like, I eat 1 slice, and I'll be like, that was a good cake. She's like, are you going to eat the rest of it? I'm like, I'm not eating a full cake. I'm not eating a full cake in the course of a week. Like, I just want 1 slice. So anyway, she usually doesn't make desserts for me. She usually lets, usually on my birthday or something, and that's about it. So I don't take advantage of it, but my wife is a very good cook. And then for the music one, I've already used some of the music things. I used to actually be involved in musicals in high school, so that's kind of interesting, but I've used that on the podcast before. We'll go with I have a 4-year-old daughter at this point, so most of the music I listen to in the car now is from the Descendants soundtrack, which, if you're familiar, it's like the villains of the Disney kids essentially go to high school, and it's like high school for heroes and villains Disney kids. So I listen to that a lot, and I actually think it's good now. I've listened to it enough where I'm like, this is a good song, and it's like, Disney kids music. So that's what my current soundtrack and driving around is right now. So.
Do you find that those songs just pop up in your head or like random points throughout the day?
Yeah, I was doing Conquer the Gauntlet Continuum, the multi-lap one, and I had one of the songs stuck in my head. I'm talking like 3 sentences from the song. They were just repeating over and over again. And I finished, and I was like, oh, my freaking head hurts from singing those 3 lines over and over again. Yeah. But
dude,
yeah,
that's too funny. What's that?
Descendants 3 has the best music if anyone's curious on the order of Descendants soundtrack. Descendants 3. Then
What's it rated? Like TV 3 to 5 year old or?
Probably. I don't know. It's yeah.
Honestly, I would probably watch that. I was watching this cartoon with my girlfriend, and as we're watching it was like really clean cut, but it was hilarious, man. And at the end of the episode, because it's on Netflix, it rolls over into the next episode, and I see up in the corner it's like TVY 7 to 10. I'm like, oh my god, who am I?
Yeah, I actually think the movies are good.
Absolutely.
Like we've watched them enough where I'm like, this is a good movie. I think this is a good Descendants, good movies. So yeah, you can check them out. It's really clever. The thing that I find most interesting is it's very clever how they took the villains and like, you know, they're kids, so they're similar to their parents, but then they're also a little bit different. So I just thought the whole concept was very clever. The music's not bad.
That sounds good. You should write a review on like Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, maybe I will.
This has been great, Evan. Really appreciate it, man. Good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and glad we could finally get the schedule. We've been working on this for, I don't know, 2 months now, something like that. It's always hard to.
Well, now it happened, and now I'm interested in buying compacts. Look at how that goes.
Yeah. So, all right. If anyone listening, you can head over to teamstrengthspeed.com. We do have Bleg mitts on there for those getting ready for toughest, world's toughest, and some like Tahoe stuff like that. We have the lights. We have the extremes. The lights are selling out, though. So if you're worried about or you want a pair of the lights, I would pick them up sooner rather than later. And then other than that, as always, my books are available on the website. The Ultra-OCR Man, my biography, which covers some of my time in the military and some of the ultra stuff I've done, is 100% for charity. So feel free to buy that book. I'm actually delivering the check by the time this comes out, it'll be several weeks ago, but I'm actually delivering the $500 check to Folds of Honor tomorrow, which will be on my Facebook feed. And yeah, so you guys can check that out. And we will see you at some races later this year for our listeners. And Joshua, I hope to see you back, maybe doing a toughest or something, even as a relay in 2020. All right.
Booyah.
Oh, before we go, what was your team's relay name at, what was it, Toughest Philly?
Oh, that was great. Yeah, Toughest Philly. We were Team Chub Cactus and the occasional helmet.
Yeah. Would you like to explain that, or are you just gonna let it ride?
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I was sitting at the computer talking to Javier, and like there's a cactus on my computer desk. And I just looked at it. I can't say where the chub came from. I mean, it was a pretty chubby cactus, but I was like, yo, chub cactus. And then Javier was like, yo, dude, and I have these like Star Wars helmets. I was like, oh, hell yeah, man. Like, and he's like, yeah, maybe we'll wear them. And I was like, oh, so we'll occasionally wear them? Yo, so we got a chub cactus and an occasional helmet. And, let your mind go wild. That's a pretty funny play on words there.
Now, last question. Did you buy the cactus specifically because of the way it looked, or did it just grow into that shape?
No, dude. Yo, that cactus is about 20 years old, and it originally belonged to my dad, and it just grew like that. I remember growing up, and it was just like always the pinnacle of comedy around like all the family gatherings. People look at the cactus, they're like, oh, look at that cactus. I was like, yo, I want that cactus. So I take care of that cactus.
All right, and if anyone's lost, it is pretty phallic in nature, the cactus. So yeah.
Indubitably, it's chubby, and it has two reservoirs for water at the base of it that are symmetrically situated.
Yeah, it is. It's remarkable. All right, thanks again for joining me. We'll catch you later.
Peace.
Down.